The Trill'eon Chronicles, Chronicles 1. Time of this chronicle, year 4 to 159 AFE, after founding Emperor, quarter 1 of season 6, The Shining Luminescence. Prologue, A New Generation. A solemn procession wound its way towards the immense audience chamber. Young ones, no more than 5 summers old, clad in flowing white robes, each bore aloft a ceremonial blade. Following close behind marched another line, their hands occupied with scrolls and tall, flickering candles. A haunting, ancient hymn echoed through the chamber as their small feet carried them towards the granite dais, a monolithic structure that seemed to rise from the very floor, defying gravity and the gaze of the assembled. Foreign dignitaries, representatives of allied worlds, and nobles of the most ancient lineages from the far corners of the Empire's vast galactic commune filled the chamber. Towering warriors, clad in heavy ceremonial battle armor, stood guard. Their long, burgundy cloaks concealed weapons of formidable power, yet their fierce eyes, burning within their helms, betrayed the unwavering discipline of the Malachite Guard, the last of the Cient'ian Empire's royal guard. These were the Empire's bulwark, a force both feared and revered. The procession of children formed a semicircle behind a colossal ivory podium, leaving an ample space between the two lines. Their hymn continued to resonate, while beneath their small feet, the very floor began to stir. A fissure opened, and from its depths a figure of breathtaking beauty emerged. Tall and regal, she stood motionless as the children's voices finally subsided. Then, with a slow, deliberate grace, she approached the ivory pedestal. She stood before the assembly, a vision of ethereal grace. High above the vast throng of dignitaries, counselors, and the royal family, who sat in a prescribed order behind her, she commanded their absolute attention. Her flowing white robe, adorned with a golden band encrusted with 3 luminous gems, green, red, and blue, marked her as of the royal bloodline. A silver cloak, its collar sweeping dramatically upwards, draped elegantly over her bare shoulders. Her arms, bare save for the intricate blue bracers that adorned her forearms, bore the mark of ancient craftsmanship. Though the years had etched their mark upon her, age had not dimmed her extraordinary beauty. Her body, despite the passage of time, exuded a power and vitality that belied her years. As she inhaled deeply, her youthful breasts rose and fell. With a voice that resonated throughout the chamber, amplified to reach every corner of the empire, she spoke. "My name is Sheena Xerxes. I am the youngest among the 5 scions of my sire, Emperor Messeronida, our species' first great sovereign. I am the keeper of the sacred hymns, the guardian of the ancient scrolls that chronicle the annals of our history. By decree, I am the chronicler of our species' grand history. The 5 sacred keys to greater understanding reside within my keeping. It is my solemn duty, upon the dawn of each millennium, to unveil before the eyes of the new generations of Cient'ia the glorious chronicle of our growth. How we, through trials of fire and blood, forged ourselves into the civilization that now stands at the zenith of its glory. I shall recount the deeds of our illustrious progenitors, those who sacrificed all in the crucible of conflict. I shall remind you of the grievous losses endured, the price exacted to secure our right to exist, to flourish as an empire that now casts its shadow across the cosmos. This chronicle I now recount for both the young and the old, that the bloodline may endure through the eons to come, that we may never again succumb to the abyssal darkness that once threatened to extinguish our very essence. And I shall speak of the higher power, the divine law that permeates all of existence, a truth known to all sentient beings. I shall implore the new generations to embrace this law, to never transgress against it, lest its wrath descend upon us once more, as it did in ancient times long past. Now I shall unseal the sacred scrolls and unveil the secrets of our history before your eyes. For countless cycles, harmony reigned supreme. This grand civilization forged alliances with other potent species, sharing their knowledge and wisdom freely. However, the seeds of discord were sown. An insidious hunger for power began to erode the foundations of this magnificent empire. Certain factions, consumed by avarice, sought to hoard knowledge and power for their own aggrandizement, to subjugate their fellow citizens. The empire fractured into 2 warring camps. One faction, consumed by a lust for domination, embraced the art of war. The other, driven by political ambition and mercantile greed, sought to control the empire through economic and political maneuvering. Both factions, locked in a deadly embrace, sought to crush their rivals and seize control of the galactic expanse. The once harmonious empire descended into a maelstrom of conflict. The halls of learning were transformed into forges of war. The spirit of cooperation, once the cornerstone of their civilization, was shattered. The fruits of their ingenuity, once a beacon of hope, were twisted into instruments of destruction. Weapons of unimaginable potency were unleashed, turning lush worlds into desolate wastelands. As the death toll mounted beyond comprehension, the remnants of both sides of the conflict sought a desperate path to peace. However, their pleas were met with renewed savagery, fueling the inferno of war. The conflict ultimately consumed their home world, transforming it into a landscape of bloodshed and despair. In a final, desperate bid for supremacy, the mercantile faction unleashed a weapon of such devastating potency that the very surface of their home world was obliterated. The atmosphere, once a cradle of life, was consumed by a fiery inferno. The inhabitants, along with all life within its reach, were incinerated like so much dry tinder. The empire, once a beacon of civilization, lay in ruins, its very essence extinguished. The surrounding systems, rendered uninhabitable, became silent monuments to their own hubris. All was lost. The accumulated knowledge of ages, the fruits of countless generations of exploration and discovery, vanished in a single cataclysmic event. Their grand inventions, both the wonders of peace and the horrors of war, were consumed by the flames. The sum of their existence, their triumphs and their tragedies, were reduced to dust. Yet a single spark remained. On the periphery of the empire, a small planetary system, a mere mote of dust in the cosmic expanse, escaped the inferno. Orbiting a distant 3-star cluster, this system, with its vibrant rings and 4 celestial companions, remained untouched. Its inhabitants, residing on the outer fringes of the empire's influence, had remained aloof from the political machinations and the ravages of war. Their unique genetic makeup and their steadfast neutrality had spared them the empire's wrath. Shortly before the destruction of the old empire, a small group of humans, recognizing the futility of the war, sought refuge with their distant cousins, the Sequiri. The Sequiri, a peaceful and highly intellectual species, granted asylum to these refugees. Over countless generations, these two distinct species interbred, their genes intertwining. The original members of both species eventually faded into history, leaving behind a new hybrid race, the Cient'ia. The Cient'ia inherited a unique blend of traits. The intelligence and thirst for knowledge of the Sequiri were mixed by the humans' inherent unpredictability, passion, and courage. Physically, they resembled the Sequiri with their elongated and elegant features, but with the addition of hair and a diverse range of eye colors. The once serene and predictable Sequiri were transformed by the infusion of human emotions. They experienced the full spectrum of human feelings: love, hate, empathy, and a newfound restlessness. This newfound emotional depth, while enriching their lives, also introduced a degree of unpredictability that had been previously absent in their culture. Thus, the Cient'ia emerged, a unique blend of two distinct species, forging a new path forward, carrying the echoes of their past while embracing the complexities of their newfound identity. This nascent race was guided by a revered council, appointed to shepherd them through their formative years. For a millennium, the Cient'ia devoted themselves to learning and growth, their focus not on conquest, but on the pursuit of knowledge. The very concept of warfare was anathema, its knowledge and practice strictly forbidden. Those who dared to delve into such forbidden territories faced swift and severe retribution. Instead, their gaze turned towards the cosmos, seeking to unravel the mysteries of the universe. They delved into the intricacies of their own existence, their inquiries leading them to the hallowed halls of genetic research, where they sought to understand and refine the very essence of their being. These great halls were situated on many outlying planets within their galactic system to study the life forms that inhabited them. With time and much research, they found the sacred knowledge to genetically enhance the Cient'ian species so that sickness and life-threatening diseases were eradicated. Intelligence, physical attributes, beauty, and even the lifespan of the race could be dramatically enhanced. Through the use of this genetic research, The average lifespan of the Cient'ia rose to approximately 1,000 Cient'ian years, or approximately 12,000 human years. In the midst of all this, there arose a proud noble. He was a scholar, a brilliant scientist, and a fearless adventurer. In his travels along the outer reaches of the Cient'ian galactic system, he found a small star surrounded by a great asteroid ring. One day, while studying this star and its rings, Messer found a tiny, glittering, moon-like asteroid unlike any he had seen. When he went to study the asteroid, he discovered that it was not hewn from galactic activity, but from the ancient hands of a long-forgotten species. The perfectly round metallic globe had many interior rooms, corridors, and great libraries. In one of these libraries, he discovered the ancient scrolls of the Lost Empire. Knowledge of this ancient empire had now turned to fable and song, and was no longer in memory and hardly in Cient'ian recorded history. This knowledge, a treasure trove of wisdom and power, had been stolen and hidden by those who had fled the ancient dying human empire. These scrolls, chronicles of an age of unparalleled brilliance, had survived the cataclysm. They had been written at the zenith of the empire's power and glory, a testament to their ingenuity and ambition. Within these precious scrolls, Messer discovered a wealth of knowledge beyond his wildest imaginings. Sensing the profound significance of this discovery, he established a residence within the metallic moon, genetically encoding the entrance to ensure his exclusive access. In the event of an unforeseen crisis, he devised a fail-safe mechanism. 5 keys, each imbued with a unique genetic sequence, were created. Only when these keys were assembled in the correct order would the entrance be revealed. These keys were then concealed in 5 highly conspicuous yet carefully chosen locations, readily accessible in times of need. A final key, the master key, was created for Messer himself. This key, imbued with his unique genetic signature, possessed the power to independently unlock the entrance to the metallic moon. Messer with meticulous care, expunged the location of this moon from all galactic records and star charts. Only within the intricate tapestry of his neural pathways resided the knowledge of its whereabouts. With unwavering dedication and ingenuity, he sought a suitable sanctuary for his discovery. He discovered an asteroid, its cavernous interior concealing a vast chamber, an ideal refuge for his celestial treasure. Within this celestial vault, he spent countless cycles, immersed in the wisdom of the ancients, his knowledge expanding exponentially. His profound wisdom and unparalleled intellect soon garnered the attention of the High Council. He was elevated to the esteemed position of Grand Counselor and eventually crowned the first emperor of the Cient'ia. Under his enlightened rule, an era of unprecedented peace and prosperity dawned upon the empire. Other fledgling empires seeking protection and prosperity willingly aligned themselves with the Cient'ian Empire. The emperor, in his wisdom, chose a wife from among the most esteemed families of the council. She was a woman of exquisite beauty, refined intellect, and exceptional genetic enhancements. Their union blessed them with 3 daughters and twin sons, though the sons were as different as night and day. Menad the elder, inherited his father's wisdom and intellectual curiosity. Tall and imposing, he possessed a gentle spirit and a deep respect for all living beings. He excelled as a scholar and scientist, earning the love and admiration of his people for his kindness and just governance. Goath'run'ouk, however, was an anomaly, a deviation from his lineage. Legend whispered of an ancient and malevolent entity that had cast its shadow upon him, twisting his destiny. Goath'run'ouk was a force of nature, possessing unparalleled strength, beauty, and an aggressive intellect. He harbored a morbid fascination with the ancient wars of the long-dead human empire, a forbidden topic within Cient'ian society. He was the first, since the cataclysm that consumed the human empire, to advocate for an offensive, expansionist military, a stark contrast to the pacifistic and defensive stance of the Cient'ian Empire. His father, the emperor, summarily dismissed his son's radical ideas. This rejection, perceived as an act of favoritism towards his twin brother, festered within Goath'run'ouk, fueling a deep-seated resentment. Driven by ambition and a thirst for power, Goath'run'ouk embarked on a clandestine journey, seeking allies among those who shared his disdain for the pacifist ideals of the Cient'ian Empire. He sought knowledge forbidden to his own people, delving into the lost history of the human empire. He soon discovered that the location of the fallen human empire had been deliberately erased from all galactic records. The Cient'ian, in their wisdom, believed that concealing the location of this ancient battlefield would shield their civilization from the temptations of militarism and the insidious influence of the human empire's technology of war. They sought to prevent the resurgence of such destructive forces, to shield their people from the horrors of war and the lingering radiation of ancient battles. Thus, the remnants of the human empire remained undisturbed, their warships and space stations, now silent monuments to their own demise, scattered across the cosmos, a grim testament to the destructive potential of unchecked ambition. In the aftermath of the cataclysm, amidst the skeletal remains of a civilization long forgotten, Goath'run'ouk found refuge. He and his kindred spirits descended upon the shattered remnants of the human empire, their minds drawn to the echoes of a bygone era. Within the decaying hulls of ancient warships and the crumbling spires of forgotten cities, Goath'run'ouk delved into the secrets of the past. He unearthed the blueprints of forgotten technologies, the whispers of long-dead empires, and the echoes of forgotten wars. From the dust of 1,000 battlefields, he forged a new order, built in the shadow of the past. In the void where once a glorious civilization had reigned, he built his own, a testament to ambition and a whisper of the old gods. The Goath'run'ouk Empire, a nascent power, clawed its way from the ashes, a silent predator in the cosmic night. Meanwhile, Miniteli, heir to a legacy of wisdom, ascended to heights his father, Messer-onita, could only have dreamed of. In a ceremony shrouded in the twilight of their age, the patriarch presented each of his children with a talisman of power, a necklace woven from the essence of stars and the whispers of the ancients. Each child swore an oath upon the fading light, a pact sealed with the blood of their ancestors, to never part with the sacred gift. But the fifth necklace, destined for Goath'run'ouk, remained hidden, a secret known only to Messer-onita's youngest daughter. Fear, a venomous serpent, had coiled around the heart of the family, whispering of treachery and the rise of a new darkness that would come through Goath'run'ouk. And so the fifth talisman, a beacon of lost hope, was entrusted to Carafirm, a confidant sworn to secrecy, a guardian of the forgotten past. Finally, Messer-onita imparted the secrets of the sacred scrolls to Miniteli, who swore an oath of eternal secrecy. From these scrolls, Miniteli imbibed the wisdom of forgotten ages, the very essence of his father's knowledge. Yet, even the mighty Messer-onita, weary from the endless burdens of the Cient'ian Empire, succumbed to the ravages of age and time. He relinquished the throne to his son, Miniteli, and retired to a life of scholarly contemplation, delving deeper into the mysteries of the ancient scrolls. Years later, a venomous rage consumed Goath'run'ouk upon learning of his brother's ascension. He returned to his father's sanctuary, as a viper in the shadows, and extinguished the old emperor's life in a torrent of blood. A swift and ruthless coup followed, and Goath'run'ouk seized the throne, his reign a tapestry woven from tyranny and brutality. Undeterred, Miniteli, armed with the profound knowledge gleaned from the sacred scrolls, forged a formidable war fleet. He resisted his brother with unwavering courage, a beacon of hope against the encroaching darkness. Thus, the once serene Cient'ian Empire was plunged into a maelstrom of civil war, a conflict that would consume 4 centuries. Ultimately, Miniteli emerged victorious, banishing his brother and his infernal legions from the Empire's domains. Fleeing the penalty of death for his treason, Goath'run'ouk retreated back to the desolate heartlands of the galaxy, back to the forsaken territories of the ancient, forgotten empire. On a barren, desiccated world, he established his new domain. There he began to build and plan his revenge, a festering wound upon the cosmos. From this accursed cradle of despair, Goath'run'ouk rebuilt his forces, forging an even more terrifying war machine. A century of relentless conquest followed, as he subjugated neighboring civilizations, draining them of their intellect and technology. Scientists and warriors, their spirits broken, were forced to serve his dark designs. He plundered their arsenals, integrating their innovations into his own, creating an instrument of unimaginable destruction. Thus a new terror was born, a new empire unto Goath'run'ouk's own invention, the evil Goath'run'ouk Empire. In time, he turned his gaze back upon the Cient'ian Empire, a light of hope that was now spreading across the stars, heralding an age of peace, prosperity, and security. Goth'run vowed this would not last long, that he would turn it to ash and broken stone. Goth'run began to plan with his evil warlords a 1,000-year conquest to destroy the great empire of his brothers. Meanwhile, knowing war was coming, Millennia, with grim resolve, erected a border of iron against the encroaching shadow of the Goath'run'ouk Empire. The Cient'ian Empire, once a beacon of peace, was now a fortress, its arsenals humming with the creation of war machines. Driven by the threat of annihilation, they pushed the boundaries of technology, forging weapons of terrifying potency to repel the ceaseless assaults of Goth'run. Millennia, delving deeper into the forbidden wisdom of the ancient scrolls than his father had ever dared, unearthed forgotten knowledge of battle formations, tactics, and strategies that had lain dormant for millennia. He instilled these arcane doctrines into his military, transforming them into an instrument of disciplined might. Gigantic shipyards, monuments to his ambition, sprang from the very bones of the planet, churning out warships like monstrous insects. Alongside his most brilliant minds, he forged weapons and machines of exquisite cruelty, a grim testament to the ingenuity of a species driven to the brink. And so, the inevitable conflict loomed, a storm gathering on the horizon. It was in this crucible of fear and desperation that my brother, our second emperor, led the fight for survival, a struggle that would forever shape the destiny of our people. Though 2 millennia have passed, the echoes of that conflict still reverberate within me, a constant reminder of the trials that forged our species and society into what it is today. I now share with you this chronicle, a testament to those tumultuous times, a glimpse into the abyss from which we emerged. Chapter 1. The Rumiel Mission. A figure of imposing stature, Lord Millennia stood motionless before the shimmering energy shield. His pale green eyes, fixed upon the alien landscape beyond, pierced the swirling yellow mist that clung to the marshes of Otoaminian Primus, a world recently liberated from the clutches of the Goath'run'ouk horde. Commander-in-Chief of the Cient'ian war fleet, a bulwark against the encroaching darkness, was lost in contemplation, his mind a maelstrom of thoughts. A figure of more delicate frame, Cient'ian, glided towards him, her movements as fluid as the whispers of the wind. "Lord Millennia," she intoned, her voice a silken caress, "representatives from the 3rd Otoaminian planet await your presence in the Oval Chamber. They demand your presence." Abruptly, he was pulled from his reverie, the echoes of their recent victory fading. He turned to face her, his gaze lingering upon the elegant curve of her neck, a small smile playing upon his lips. Cient'ian, a warrior of exceptional lineage, trained in the hallowed halls of the Cient'ian academies, served as his personal attendant, a shadow that moved with him through the galaxy. Her presence, a constant reminder of the burdens he carried. This mission, this relentless pursuit of peace, was not of his own invention. It was the decree of the High Council, a mandate born of fear and desperation. Lord Millennia, however, harbored deep reservations. The Rumiel mission, a colossal undertaking, demanded a century of their lives, a century of sacrifice, and an incalculable toll in lives and resources. He feared it was a gamble, a desperate ply to long-dead gods who no longer heard the pleas of mortal men, a huge gamble that could shatter the fragile peace they had so dearly won. "Yes, indeed it is time," he murmured, a tremor of unease in his voice. He paused, his gaze fixed on the shimmering expanse of the metallic hallway that led to the Oval Chamber. "You know how I feel about this mission, don't you, Cient'ian?" he inquired, his voice low. Cient'ian bowed her head, her gaze tracing the intricate patterns of the polished floor. Her raven hair swayed against her shoulder, the woven metal beads clinking against her skin. She knew with a certainty of his doubts, his foreboding. Yet to express such sentiments was tantamount to treason. Obedience was paramount. "Yes, my lord," she replied, her voice a mere breath. "I sense your apprehension." He stopped, turning to regard her with an intensity that made her heart quicken. "Apprehension is an understatement, Cient'ian. You are perceptive, my young protégé. To speak your truth, despite the potential consequences, is a virtue I hold dear. In the Cient'ian Empire, dissent was a shadow that could consume one's very existence. To question the wisdom of the High Council, to probe the motives of those who wielded power, was seen as an act of defiance that carried the gravest of penalties, exile or worse. Yet, a flicker of concerned curiosity ignited within Cient'ian. "My lord," she began, her voice barely audible. "My lord, may I please ask why you oppose the mission?" Millennia regarded her, a flicker of worry in his pale green eyes. "You are bold, Cient'ian," he acknowledged, his voice low, a rare trait in one so young. He studied her face, searching for any hint of deceit, any flicker of disloyalty. She met his gaze unflinchingly, her expression a mask of serene obedience. He found no fault in her. "Many have fallen, Cient'ian," he said, his voice grave. "Countless lives sacrificed on the altar of a desperate defense against a stronger adversary. We have pushed the boundaries of our empire, venturing into the unknown, encountering foes of terrifying strength. This Rumel mission," he paused, the weight of his words heavy in the air, "demands an unimaginable toll. A century of our lives, a century of sacrifice, all for a peace that may never come." He slowed his pace, his gaze fixed on the shimmering corridor that stretched before them, a serpent of polished metal. "Imagine yourself in my position, Cient'ian, Grand Commander-in-Chief, burdened with the weight of countless lives, 200 light-years from home, a needle on the edge of the galaxy surrounded by enemies. Reinforcements, a distant echo. Supplies, a precarious lifeline. How would you feel, knowing that the fate of an empire rests on your shoulders? Knowing that a single misstep could shatter everything?" "I understand, my lord," Cient'ian replied, her voice a low murmur. "The weight of this endeavor, it weighs heavily upon us all. We are a long way from home, adrift in this uncharted sea of stars. The constant battles, the losses, they have taken their toll." She paused, her gaze fixed on the shimmering floor. "But we will not falter. We will honor your command, my lord. Our great warriors, they will fight with unwavering loyalty, as will I." Millennia, a flicker of appreciation in his eyes, nodded. "Your loyalty is unwavering, Cient'ian. I know you will see this mission through." He paused, a grim smile playing on his lips. "Though I confess, I would rather be facing the Goath'run'ouk than these endless political machinations." As they rounded the corner, a sight that caught them both by surprise met their gaze. 2 rows of warriors, their armor gleaming like polished obsidian, stood at attention, their faces obscured by intimidating helms. "The Malachite Guard. The Malachite Guard," Cient'ian whispered, her voice barely audible. But they are only deployed at the Empress's command." "Indeed," Millennia replied, his voice a low murmur. "How interesting!" Cient'ian, her heart pounding against her ribs, followed close behind him, her gaze fixed on the impassive faces of the guards. Each warrior, a masterpiece of genetic engineering and rigorous training, the product of hundreds of years of meticulous selection and relentless discipline. These were his creations, his instruments of war, and yet their presence here, it spoke of a power beyond his own. Millennia halted before a shimmering door, his hand hovering over the surface. A shimmering field erupted, a ghostly hand materializing, its touch cold and impersonal. He submitted his hand to the scanner, his identity verified. Immediately another panel materialized, a constellation of symbols illuminating the surface. With practiced ease, he keyed in the access code, a series of intricate gestures that unlocked the door. An energy field enveloped him, a silent guardian, probing his very essence, analyzing his genetic makeup. Finally, the door hissed open, revealing the chamber beyond. Millennia swiftly moved through the doorway, his gaze sweeping over the opulent chamber. He paused at a second interface, his fingers dancing across the surface as he inputted a new code. "You may proceed, Cient'ian," he commanded. Cient'ian, her heart pounding, stepped through the doorway. The heavy door slid shut behind her with a soft sigh, leaving her alone in the eerie silence. Never before had she been privy to such a sacred space. The chamber was an oval, a breathtaking spectacle of light and shadow. A ramp of shimmering white stone ascended towards the center, its edges adorned with intricate carvings. Rows of pedestals like ghostly sentinels lined the ramp, each row diminishing in number until a single pedestal stood majestically at the summit. The walls, shimmering with an ethereal glow, were adorned with bas-reliefs depicting scenes of grandeur and conquest. 4 pillars of glistening black stone, polished to a mirror-like sheen, rose from the corners of the chamber, their summits converging far above, where a magnificent chandelier, a cascade of crystal and light, hung suspended. Smaller chandeliers, like glittering stars, descended from the main fixture, illuminating the pedestals below. Minitelli, a hint of amusement in his eyes, turned to regard her. "Your first glimpse of an oval chamber, is it not, Cient'ian?" "Yes, my lord," she replied, her voice a hushed whisper. "Each chamber is unique," he explained, "a testament to the diversity of our allies. Yet certain elements remain constant. The oval shape, a symbol of unity, of the cyclical nature of existence." "It is indeed breathtaking," Cient'ian replied, her voice a hushed whisper. A sudden shift in the air, a subtle disturbance in the stillness, drew their attention. Standing a short distance away, a figure of imposing stature materialized. Tall and broad-shouldered, he exuded an aura of raw power. A mighty blade, its edge gleaming, rested in his powerful grip. His eyes, the color of glacial ice, swept over Minitelli, then lingered on Cient'ian, assessing, analyzing. "The Empress and her council will be arriving shortly, my lord," he announced, his voice low and chilled. Minitelli, his expression unreadable, inclined his head in acknowledgement. "Thank you, Cient'ian." Cient'ian watched in astonishment. Never, in all her years of service, had she witnessed her lord display such an honor to a non-noble. Who was this man, and why did he command such profound respect? "This is Cient'ian," Minitelli said, turning to her, a hint of pride in his voice. "The Empress's personal guard. I trained him, molded him from a boy into the warrior he is today. He is the Grand Elite Master of the Malachite Guard, the finest warrior our empire has ever produced, and the scars he bears, they are a testament to his valor." Cient'ian, his lips curving into a fleeting, chilling smile, acknowledged her with a curt nod. His eyes, however, held a disconcerting intensity, probing deep into her soul. Suddenly, the chamber began to shift. The rows of pedestals, with a soft whirring sound, sank into the floor, leaving behind a smooth, seamless surface. Cient'ian, startled, turned to Minitelli for an explanation. "It is time to assume our positions," he said, his voice low and urgent. "Indeed," Cient'ian agreed, his voice a cold whisper. He turned and began to ascend the ramp, his movements fluid and powerful. Minitelli followed Cient'ian close behind. Cient'ian led them to the summit of the ramp, motioning for them to take their positions to his right. Minitelli indicated for Cient'ian to stand a step behind and to his left, while Cient'ian positioned himself opposite, a silent sentinel. A tremor, a subtle shift in the very fabric of the chamber, announced their arrival. From the depths of the floor, figures began to emerge. Noblemen and noblewomen of the Cient'ian Empire, their faces etched with the weight of their lineage and the gravity of the occasion. As they materialized, a collective gaze, a sea of concerned eyes, turned towards the central pedestal, a silent acknowledgement of their presence. "For their safety," Minitelli explained to Cient'ian, his voice a low murmur, "the nobles and counselors ascend from hidden chambers beneath the floor, a precaution against unforeseen circumstances." As he spoke, Cient'ian descended the ramp, meeting another figure at the base, a figure cloaked in shadow, his movements as fluid as a panther. This, Cient'ian realized, was Cient'ian's second in command, a warrior of equal ferocity, a reflection of his own lethal grace. "That is his second," Minitelli whispered, his voice a low whisper. "Only Cient'ian or his aide are permitted to guard the Empress. Ascidius never travels without them." The two warriors approached each other, a silent exchange passing between them. They clasped shoulders, a gesture of acknowledgement, a silent oath of loyalty. Then they separated, standing 5 feet apart, forming a formidable barrier before the entrance. Their blades, gleaming and polished to mirror like reflective surface, rose in unison, held vertically before them, a silent testament to their unwavering vigilance. The floor beneath them parted, revealing a hidden chamber. A figure emerged, a vision of regal beauty. Empress Ascidius, draped in a flowing ivory robe and a regal purple cloak, ascended. The cloak, trimmed with shimmering gold, framed her face like a halo of shadow. A simple gold band, adorned with a single, mesmerizing emerald, encircled her brow. Her features, sculpted by generations of careful breeding, were exquisite. High cheekbones, a jawline chiseled from marble, and lips full and sensual. Around her neck, a delicate gold chain held captive a strange, otherworldly crystal, its facets catching the light. A braided gold belt cinched her waist, securing the sheath of a finely crafted long sword. The Empress remained motionless, a silent sentinel surveying her domain. The assembly, with the exception of the two obsidian-clad guards and Minitelli, knelt in unison, their heads bowed in submission. Her gaze, sharp as an eagle's, swept across the room, taking in the sea of bowing heads, the tapestry of fear and reverence. Her eyes lingered on Minitelli, a hint of pride in their depths. Then her gaze flickered to Cient'ian, her smile deepening. With a graceful, almost ghostly movement, she began her ascent, the silken folds of her robe trailing behind her like a phantom. As she ascended, the central pedestal, a testament to her power, materialized into a throne of ivory and gold rising to meet her. The two malachite guards, silent and watchful, flanked her every move. Finally reaching the summit, she turned to face her subjects, her presence filling the chamber with an aura of both power and an unsettling serenity. Then, with a regal gesture, she sank onto the throne, her gaze sweeping over the assembly, a silent proclamation of her authority. The Empress, a breathtaking figure against the backdrop of the chamber, drew her long sword from its sheath. The blade, a masterpiece of craftsmanship, gleamed menacingly in the light. She placed it on her lap, a silent testament to her power. "All in the assembly will now rise," the Malachite guard commanded, his voice echoing through the chamber. The assembly, a sea of faces, rose in unison, their voices a single, reverent chant, Atunoe Antunike Tomoik, the ancient oath of loyalty to the royal family and the empire. The guard, his arm outstretched, lowered his hand slowly, a silent command. The pedestals, with a soft hum, rose to seating height, accommodating the assembled dignitaries. Cient'ian, mesmerized, watched the spectacle unfold. She had glimpsed the Empress once before, a fleeting image across a crowded hall. But to witness her majesty so close, to feel the palpable weight of her power, was an experience that would forever be etched in her memory. The Empress, a vision of regal elegance, surveyed her subjects, her gaze sweeping across the rows of faces, some familiar, others strangers. The Empress turned her attention to Minitelli, her gaze piercing, her voice silken but powerful. "Lord Minitelli, you must be wondering why I have summoned you here, why I have gathered the entire nobility to assemble in this remote corner of the galaxy." Minitelli stepped forward, his posture a blend of respect and power. "Yes, Your Highness," he replied, his voice steady. "It is highly unusual to find the royal court so far from the heart of the empire. I can only assume that matters of grave importance, perhaps even threats to the empire itself, have necessitated this extraordinary gathering." The Empress, her gaze fixed on the blade in her lap, traced the length of its polished surface with a fingertip, a chilling stillness settling over the chamber. Then, with a fluid motion, she grasped the hilt, the ivory of her hand contrasting starkly with the black metal of the weapon. Descending from the throne, she moved towards the edge of the ramp, her every step a silent proclamation of her authority. Turning to face Minitelli, her face, usually so impassive, now contorted with a grave essence. "The Goath'run'ouk," she began, her voice a low, mournful dirge, "have breached our defenses, our outer perimeters have fallen, shipyards, command centers, even our most vital resource mines, all now under their control. The Goath'run'ouk region, it is lost. Our finest warriors, our bravest commanders, annihilated. They fought valiantly, but it was not enough." A tremor of anger passed through her, and she raised a hand clenched into a fist, her brow furrowed in a blaze of anger that almost overtook her. Cient'ian's protege, he was the only survivor. A boy, barely more than a fledgling, sent back in a crippled life pod, the sole witness to the carnage. He died recounting the horror, his last breath a whisper of the Goath'run'ouk's merciless assault. A wave of grief washed over her, her shoulders lowered a bit. "He was so young," she murmured, her voice thick with anger. "Just a boy embarking on his first mission, and now he is gone." Regaining her composure, she turned to face the assembly, her gaze sweeping over the faces of the nobles and counselors. "Permission is granted," she declared, her voice regaining its regal cadence, "for the assembly to speak freely." Minitelli turned as the first nobleman rose to his feet. "Lord Minitelli," the nobleman, Mortaralexes, began, his voice resonant with a hint of trepidation, "I am honored to see you again. My father, he fell in defense of the border 11 years ago. I succeeded him, carrying on the legacy of our family. He paused, his gaze sweeping across the assembly. I speak for us all when I say that it is an honor to have you amongst us during these dark times. A wave of cheers erupted from the assembly, a collective expression of relief and admiration. The Empress, her gaze sweeping across the assembled nobles, interjected, her voice a low, commanding rumble. We have come here not for celebration, but for survival. The Goath'run'ouk, they have grown stronger. Their technology, their weaponry, it surpasses anything we have encountered before. They are a formidable foe, more dangerous than ever. We have sought refuge in this remote sector, she continued, to regroup, to formulate a plan, to devise a strategy that will allow us to reclaim our home, to defeat this blight upon our civilization. Millennia, his brow furrowed, leaned forward. How close are they to our home world? An elderly female counselor, her face etched with the weight of years and the gravity of the situation, rose to her feet. They have breached the outer perimeter, Lord Millennia. They have established a foothold within our defenses, yet they have not advanced further. Our outposts, 160 of them, silent. No distress signals, no communication. We are adrift in a sea of uncertainty. They wait, watching, biding their time. Millennia lowered his head, a finger tracing the line of his jaw. All these years, he murmured, the weight of the passage of time settling heavily upon him. Years of travel, and they were right behind us all along. Indeed, the Empress replied, her voice a low thrum. The moment you departed, the attacks began. We followed your trail, a ghost of plasma exhaust, desperate to find a safe haven, a place to regroup and plan our counter-offensive. Another elderly noble rose to his feet, his voice trembling with great age and wisdom. My lord, he declared, the evacuation protocols were enacted. The ruling class, the heart of our civilization, was evacuated to ensure our survival. We had to buy time to prepare for the inevitable attack that must be forthcoming. Millennia, his gaze sweeping across the assembly, felt a surge of anxiety. 11 years, he repeated, the implications of her words sinking in. 11 years they have been within our borders, consolidating their power, preparing for something. Commander Trill'eon, the Empress explained, has been entrusted with the defense of our home world. He is a capable commander, but the situation is dire. We need you, Lord Millennia. We need your experience, your leadership. We need you to retake command of our forces. And the Goath'run'ouk, have they sent reinforcements? Millennia inquired, his voice a low, heavy tone. We have sent out scouts, the Empress replied, but there has been no sign of a larger force. Yet their technology, it surpasses our own. They have the ability to move undetected, to appear as shadows. The weight of responsibility, the enormity of the task before him, pressed down upon him. The fate of his people, the future of the empire, rested on his shoulders. Synapses stepped forward, her gaze fixed on the Empress. Your Highness, she began, her voice strong. May I ask a question? The Empress, surprised by her forwardness, turned to regard her. Her gaze lingered on Millennia, seeking his approval. He nodded, a silent encouragement. Nodding toward her, Speak freely, Synapses, the Empress said, her voice filled with curiosity. Synapses took a deep breath. If, as you say, the Armada is to be recalled to defend the home world, what then becomes of the Rumel mission? And how will the safety of the royal family be ensured? The Empress smiled, a hint of warmth in her eyes. A valid concern, Synapses. Rest assured we have considered these matters. The Rumel mission will continue, albeit with a reduced force. Admiral Zeus Moylok, a commander of proven mettle, will assume command. He will proceed with a smaller fleet, maintaining a discreet presence while we address the immediate threat. A tall nobleman rose to his feet, his gaze sweeping across the assembly. The safety of the royal family, he declared, his voice firm, is of paramount importance. The High Council has selected elite battalions of the Malachite Guard for our protection. Furthermore, we have discovered a secure location within the Harrogart region, a hidden sanctuary where we can continue to govern, to coordinate our defense, even in the face of the enemy. The elderly nobleman bowed and resumed his seat. Millennia, his gaze fixed on the Empress, spoke slowly. I concur with the arrangement, though I believe the Rumel mission should be temporarily suspended until the immediate threat to our home world is neutralized. I do, however, agree with your choice of Admiral Zeus Moylok. He is a veteran, a warrior forged in the crucible of countless battles. He will carry out your orders with unwavering dedication." He paused, a tremor of unease running through him. Yet, the force assigned to him, it is a mere shadow of the armada that embarked on this mission. One command ship, 3 scouts, 2 barges. It is a fragile venture, a needle against the vastness of the unknown. The Empress, her gaze fixed on him, a chilling stillness descending upon the chamber, replied, "Admiral Zeus Moilok is not merely a commander, Lord Minatelli. He is a legend, a survivor of the earliest days of our interstellar exploration. He was among the first to graduate from the Intergalactic Naval Academy, trained by our first emperor himself. He embodies the spirit of our ancestors, the courage and resilience that forged this empire." Minatelli nodded, acknowledging her words. "He is a warrior forged in the fires of countless battles, a legend whispered in the halls of our academies. I have learned much from his unwavering resolve, his unwavering dedication to duty. If the Rumal mission is to continue, his leadership is paramount." The Empress, a hint of a smile gracing her lips, nodded in agreement. "Nobleman Timon Trock," she declared, "will now brief you on the plan for your immediate return and the defense of our home world." The Empress, her gaze fixed on the assembly, sat back on the throne and placed the sword back on her lap. A sense of anticipation and determination settled over the chamber. The elderly nobleman, Timon Trock, rose to his feet, bowing respectfully to the Empress and then to Lord Minatelli. He extended his arm, activating a small console affixed to his forearm. With a soft hum, a pillar rose from the floor, a thin, metallic shaft emerging from its center. The shaft split, arcing outward, and a holographic image materialized before them, a breathtaking panorama of the galactic region. The Cient'ian Empire, a vast network of star systems, was displayed in intricate detail. The northern borders, the western and eastern fringes, the southern territories, and finally, their current location, Kyra Tychon, Autoominion Primus. The metallic arcs continued to descend, revealing a more detailed view, encompassing the entire Cient'ian system and the newly charted territories beyond. Nobel Timon Trock, his finger tracing the holographic map, highlighted an orange planet. "Lord Minatelli," he began, his voice firm, demanding attention, "your return route will be as follows." A luminous line appeared, tracing a path through a series of asteroid belts and minor planetary systems. "These are the coordinates," he stated, the navigational data appearing at the base of the holographic display. Nobleman Timon Trock started, "It's a much safer path than the one you battled through to get here. Admiral Zeus Moilok took this route on his way here to rendezvous with you and encountered no resistance. Our long-range probes discovered the route by detecting very old, almost dissipated engine plasma exhaust trails. The Admiral discovered fully developed galactic regions with no inhabitants along this route. And although he did not have time to investigate further, he could tell us that the entire region is void of any intelligent life. We have sent thousands of probes into this region, and all data indicates that it is uninhabited. For this reason, we have decided to move the royal family and the High Council to this region for the rest of the war. From within this newly discovered, long-forgotten system, we can amass a new fleet. If the system is safe, we can bring all the civilians to this sector until the war is over. You will be able to refuel and resupply in this region at an abandoned supply post. Our probes have returned images of huge cities and outer planetary docking yards. Most likely you will find an abundance of new supplies in this region. Our data indicates that the last inhabitants of this system disappeared very suddenly and left everything behind." He paused for a moment, a chilling silence falling over the chamber as he swept his gaze across the assembly. "Admiral Zeus Moilok traveled here with his assigned armada, so there will be no need to retain many ships from your current fleet. Most of your star cruisers and barges will escort us to our destination, providing a measure of protection should the worst-case scenario occur. The remaining fleet will return with you as soon as they are refueled and loaded with munitions and supplies. The maintenance barges will stay behind. We need you to travel as close to light speed as possible. Those old barges are only capable of traveling at half the speed of light and will slow you down. We need you to be in command of the front as soon as possible. You will also be traveling with a smaller crew. We want an efficiently run armada that can travel extremely fast and require little manpower and supplies. You will need to choose your personnel as soon as you can. You are free to take any crew members you like, and you are welcome to choose a small complement of Malachite guards to assist your soldiers in case you need to perform off-ship operations along the way. I have a premonition that this journey will not be without its challenges. Lord Tymontrock, his gaze a flickering ember, shifted his attention from Cient'ian, who stood silent as a wraith beside the Empress, and then to the other guardsmen flanking her throne. Minatelli inclined his head, acknowledging the grim task before him. "Caesar Axes," he commanded, his voice a powerful command. "Bear the new mission protocols and star chart coordinates to the command vessel. Assemble a crew from the remnants of the Rummel expedition, those who yet cling to life, and prepare the armada for departure within 3 nights." Caesar Axes, her figure a shadow against the gleaming walls, bowed low, her voice a silken whisper. "As you command, my lord." She knelt before the Empress, her head bowed in supplication, then turned to the assembly of nobles, each face pale and drawn. She nodded respectfully to them all. Minitelli offered a supportive smile. "Solom," he commanded, "escort Caesar Axes to the command vessel and aid her in preparing for this journey." Solom immediately stepped forward. He gazed briefly toward Caesar Axes. "As you command, my lord." He gestured towards the archway leading from the cavernous hall. "After you, Admiral." Caesar Axes, her gaze lingering on Minitelli, hesitated, then moved past Solom, her footsteps echoing eerily in the vast chamber. Assidious, her voice a silken command, addressed the assembly. "Friends, your sacrifices are appreciated. We thank you for your support in this desperate endeavor." The assembly, a sea of pale faces, rose, their voices a chorus of subdued murmurs as they saluted the Empress. Assidious, with a weary nod, dismissed them, their retreating figures fading into the shadows. Turning to the remaining guard who remained at her side, she spoke, her voice a silken caress. "Amantuk, please, step outside. I wish to speak with my brother." She offered him a reassuring smile, her eyes gleaming with an ancient, wise light. The powerful guard, his face set like stone, bowed his head and vanished through the portal. The dignitaries, like moths drawn to a dying flame, began to disperse, their conversations a low hum of fear and uncertainty. The Empress, her gaze fixed on Minitelli, came to him and held him close, her embrace a desperate plea for comfort. She stepped back, her hands gripping his shoulders, her voice softening. "Brother, 11 years have passed, yet you remain unchanged, and a very welcome sight to behold. You have even returned to your ancient ways." She smiled warmly, her eyes fixed on his flowing black hair. Minitelli arched a brow, a rare smile gracing his lips, revealing teeth as white as moonstones beneath a finely trimmed beard. "Aye, sister," he replied, his voice a low. "I have chosen to adorn myself as the warriors of old, and it seems the legions find favor in it." The Empress, her golden hair a silken waterfall cascading down her shoulders, inclined her head in approval. "It suits you well, brother," she murmured, her voice like the whisper of wind through ancient trees. Her gaze swept towards the archway leading from the oval chamber, then returned to Minitelli. "Caesar Axes flourishes, brother. She will soon be a formidable all-commander." "She surpasses even my own lofty expectations," Minitelli admitted, his voice tinged with a hint of wistful pride. "Never have I encountered a protege of such brilliance. Soon, I must release her to the Academy for the training of fleet all-commanders. A thought that fills me with a profound sense of loss." Empress Assidious smiled, a mischievous glint in her eyes as she tilted her head. "That is, of course, if she is willing to depart your tutelage. I suspect she will cling to your side with the tenacity of ivy. It may require a decree from either of us to compel her attendance at the Academy, a decree I shall never issue. She clearly reveres you, brother, and wears her position as your protege with immense pride. She is the very image of her mother, fiercely loyal unto death. Like her father, her will is as strong as tempered steel, and she blossoms into a warrior of exceptional power. And like her mother, she possesses a beauty that takes the breath away. Truly a rare and wondrous being." Minitelli nodded in silent agreement as they traversed the shimmering corridor flanked by the emerald-clad Malachite guard. towards the chambers where their beloved family and friends awaited their return with eager anticipation. Chapter 2. Return to the Emerald Nebula. Caesaraxes stood sentinel at the helm of the massive battleship, her gaze sweeping across the intricate machinery that hummed beneath her feet. The cavernous depths of the vessel, a labyrinth of steel and shadow, teemed with activity. Crews scurried along the lower decks, their movements a blur of motion in the dim, emerald light that filtered through the viewport. To her left, the yawning maw of the loading bay awaited its prey. Here the ship gorged itself on supplies and the ebb and flow of life. The coming and going of the crew, the whispers of distant ports marked the rhythm of their existence. And then a shadow fell across the bay. A sleek, glistening shuttle glided in, its hull shimmering with an eerie emerald sheen. As the docking clamps secured their hold, a heavy door hissed open, revealing a figure cloaked in darkness. It was Trill'eon. He descended the ramp, a figure of imposing stature, his movements fluid and predatory. 12 figures followed, their armor gleaming, their faces obscured by the shadows of their helmets. They formed a silent, watchful ring around him, their presence a palpable weight in the air. Trill'eon addressed them, his voice a low, guttural growl that echoed through the depths of the ship. He scrutinized each warrior, his gaze sharp as a predator's. With a flick of his wrist, he presented each with a small data disk, each bearing the weight of their impending mission. He paused before the last warrior, his gaze lingering, a flicker of uncertainty in his eyes. The disk, a cold, metallic weight in his hand, seemed to throb with a malevolent energy. He turned away, the disk vanishing into the folds of his cloak. Then, with a gesture that sent a shiver down Caesaraxes' spine, he dismissed the silent phalanx, their movements as coordinated as the strike of a venomous serpent. The young warrior stepped forward, his chest puffed out with a bravado that masked the tremor in his limbs. Trill'eon, a shadow against the emerald light, circled him, his voice a low, guttural growl, a serpent whispering its secrets. Then, in a blur of motion, the master's sword erupted, a viper striking with blinding speed. The young warrior, agile as a panther, ducked beneath the deadly arc, his own blade a flash of silver, mirroring his master's movements. They clashed, a whirlwind of steel, a dance of death. Each parry, each riposte was a desperate struggle for survival. Their eyes, burning with primal intensity, locked, a silent battle of wills raging beneath the surface. Time seemed to cease to exist. The only sound was the chilling screech of metal on metal, the air thick with the metallic tang of blood. The other Malachite guards, statues of silence, remained motionless, their faces impassive, their gaze fixed on the deadly dance. Then, as suddenly as it began, it ended. Trill'eon, a chilling smile playing on his lips, disengaged, the blade vanishing back into its sheath. He placed a hand on the young warrior's shoulder, his touch icy cold. "You have passed," he rasped, his voice a mere whisper. With a nod, he thrust the data disk into the young warrior's hand. The warrior, trembling but resolute, bowed his head, a silent acknowledgement of his master's judgment. He returned to his place among the other guards, his heart pounding like a trapped bird against his ribs. Caesaraxes observed the scene below with the detached curiosity of a hawk circling its prey. Her face, pale and serene, betrayed no emotion. Trill'eon, his form a silhouette against the emerald glow, spoke a few final words to the line of warriors, then vanished through a sliding panel of polished obsidian. Caesaraxes' gaze swept across the ship. The decks, normally a hive of industrious activity, were now alive with the murmur of 1,000 voices. The crew, a sea of faces, pressed against the guardrails, their eyes wide with a mixture of awe and apprehension. Many had never witnessed the spectacle of the Malachite Guard, their rituals shrouded in an air of sacred mystery. A low hum of excitement rippled through the ship, the voices coalescing into a single buzzing sound. Then, as swiftly as it had begun, the spectacle ended. The crew, their curiosity sated, returned to their duties, the ship once more settling into the rhythm of its silent journey. Caesaraxes smiled, a fleeting, almost imperceptible movement of her lips. The Malachite warriors, their armor gleaming like polished onyx, had broken ranks, their voices a low chorus of congratulations, surrounding the young warrior, truly making him one of their brothers. "They have accepted him," a voice, smooth and soft, whispered behind her. Caesaraxes turned, startled. A figure stood just within the doorway of the observation deck, their form shrouded in a silvery cloak that concealed all but the delicate curve of their chin and the sensuous curve of their lips. The cloaked figure moved closer, their presence as subtle as the shifting shadows. "He is the newest of the Malachite Guard," they continued, their voice a low melodic hum. "He replaces a fallen warrior whose name will be entered into the halls of legend." Their gaze swept across the scene below. Few have ever survived the test of Siloam. This young warrior is the youngest to ever become a Malachite Guard. His name is Talonvex. He has a bright future. "And what if he hadn't parried?" Caesaraxes inquired, her voice a low thrum in the still air. "Then the cleaning crews would have much to attend to," the figure replied, their tone devoid of sympathy. "You see, when members of the royal family require escort, only the finest of the Malachite Guard are deemed worthy. Their duties are sacred, their performance flawless. There is no room for error." "I understand," Caesaraxes acknowledged, a flicker of unease stirring within her. Then, her gaze hardening, she turned to the cloaked figure. "I must point out that I have not seen your security clearance for this deck, let alone this vessel. Your name and rank, if you please. I require your boarding clearance immediately." The figure paused, a hint of amusement in their eyes. With a graceful movement, they swept back the hood of their cloak, revealing a face of exquisite beauty. A cascade of raven hair tumbled down their shoulders, framing features that were both delicate and strong. "My apologies," she said, her voice a melodious chime. "I was eager to meet you before your departure and neglected proper introductions." She stepped closer, extending a hand. "I am Sheena Xerxes, but you may call me Sheena. I am the youngest sister of Menetele and Asidius." Caesaraxes recoiled, her eyes widening in shock. You are the sister of my lord and empress Asidias?" she stammered, her voice barely a whisper. "Indeed," Sheena confirmed, her smile warm and inviting. Caesaraxes, stricken with a sudden wave of dread, immediately dropped to one knee. The rest of the crew, sensing the gravity of the situation, followed suit. "My deepest apologies, Your Highness," Caesaraxes murmured, her voice trembling. "I did not recognize you." Sheena, her expression softening, reached out and gently lifted Caesaraxes to her feet. "No need for such formalities, Proje Seraxes. I should have sent word ahead of my arrival." She turned to the assembled crew. "All is well. You may all resume your duties." The other crew members, their curiosity piqued, but their fear of incurring the wrath of the royal family far greater, immediately resumed their duties, their movements now punctuated by nervous glances towards the doorway. Sheena turned back to Caesaraxes, a mischievous glint in her eyes. "You see," she explained, "every ship in the fleet is genetically coded to the royal bloodline. There was no need for security clearance. My siblings and I can come and go as we please." "Of course, Your Highness," Caesaraxes replied, still slightly flustered. "It's just not exactly an everyday occurrence for a member of the royal family to simply board a warship." "Indeed," a voice rumbled, cutting through the air. Siloam, his face a mask of disapproval, stood in the doorway, his eyes fixed on Sheena with a stern intensity. "My lady, I see you have found your way to the main command observatory without incident." Sheena met his gaze, her smile fading slightly. "Yes, I wish to meet Admiral Caesaraxes before your departure. I feared that if I waited for the proper escort, I might miss this opportunity, and then I would be forced to wait years to meet her." Siloam's lips tightened. He gestured toward Lord Menetele, who had followed Siloam onto the command deck. "My Lord Menetele will address this matter. In the meantime, I suggest you familiarize yourself with the ship's layout." He turned to Caesaraxes. "Caesaraxes, I trust you have prepared the armament as instructed. I will inspect it personally." He handed Caesaraxes a new data disk, a glint of steel in his eyes. With a curt nod to both Sheena and Caesaraxes, he disappeared through the sliding door. As he left, another Malachite guard materialized in his place, standing sentinel at the entrance. Menetele turned to Caesaraxes. "I trust you have been introduced to my youngest sister?" "Yes, my lord," Caesaraxes replied, somewhat formally. Menetele exchanged a knowing glance with Sheena, raising his eyebrows in a subtle but unmistakable warning. Sheena, understanding the message, lowered her gaze submissively. He placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder for a brief moment, then turned his attention back to Cient'ian. I trust you have all mission protocols in place? Yes, my lord. The fleet is armed and fueled. I have selected the finest vessels from the Rumal Armada and the most seasoned troops for the return voyage. We will be ready to sail in 16 hours, once the engines have undergone final testing. Very well, Minitelli declared. We set sail in 18 hours. Inform the crews to prepare accordingly. Aye, my lord, Cient'ian acknowledged. Minitella nodded. Good. Now, I must consult with the Empress. I leave you two to become acquainted. And Sheena, please refrain from making the Royal Guard's duties any more challenging than they already are. Sheena nodded obediently, her gaze fixed on her older brother. With another nod and a warm smile to both women, Minitelli turned and exited the command observatory. Sheena turned back to Cient'ian, a small frown creasing her brow. Siloam is quite serious about his duties. He has scolded me on numerous occasions in the past. Cient'ian, unsure how to respond to the young princess's confession, simply nodded silently. You mentioned that 2 members of the royal family would be accompanying us. Cient'ian changed the subject. Will it be you and Empress Assidius? Sheena looked surprised at the question. No, have they not told you? I will remain here. As the Empire's chronicler and keeper of sacred requiems, I must remain far from the front lines. The entire history of our people, all our sacred teachings are stored within my mind. I am the living repository of the kingdom's secrets. She walked to the railing of the command deck and gazed down at the bustling activity on the lower levels. Have you forgotten that your master, Minitelli, is the rightful emperor? Though he allows Assidius to rule, he is the true sovereign. He is the second member of the royal family accompanying you. She turned back to Cient'ian, her eyes filled with a profound respect. He would never sit idly on a throne while his warriors faced peril. He must be with them. It is his honor, his duty. He sees himself as no better than any other soldier. The second member on board is one that has never been revealed. This second one has no knowledge of their family lineage, and they remain in their duties undetected, unknown to all but the royal family. Cient'ian nodded her head, acknowledging the truth in Sheena's words. It is sometimes difficult to remember that he is the emperor, she admitted. He serves alongside us, his authority a quiet presence, never overtly exercised. Yet none of us would dare disobey his orders. Sheena smiled. Would you allow me to accompany you on your inspection rounds? I would like to learn more about your duties, to know you better. Cient'ian nodded. You are of the royal family. Your presence is always welcome. It would be my honor. Sheena's smile widened. Then let us begin. Cient'ian gestured towards the lift. First, we shall inspect the weapon and armament decks, ensuring we are fully prepared to sail as the Emperor has commanded. Come this way. Once on the lift, Sheena pulled her cloak to the right of her back and secured it with a practiced knot, ensuring it wouldn't snag on any protruding machinery, a necessary precaution for anyone navigating the ship's intricate workings. Cient'ian, observing her movements, noticed the absence of something. I apologize for my intrusion, Your Highness, she began, but I noticed you are not carrying an Latariel blade. Do not all of the royal bloodlines possess them? Sheena smiled. Yes, we do. However, we must await the age of calibration. Our bodies must fully mature, our biochemistry complete. If an Latariel blade, or any other Latariel weapon, is bonded to us too early, while we are still in the bloom of youth, it will become mismatched to our developing physiology too early. The weapon will become useless, a burden instead of an asset. I must wait a few more decades. Cient'ian nodded thoughtfully. And since we are genetically engineered for extended lifespans, that could be a considerable wait. I myself am considered just beyond second youth, entering the first phase of adult development. I am 200 years old. Indeed, Sheena confirmed. I am only 110, still considered a young mid-child. I was born shortly before my mother and father were lost to the attack of Goath'run'ouk and his horde. I have only completed the initial stages of command training at the cadet academies. My combat skills are rudimentary at best, barely surpassing those of a level 1 cadet. I have much to learn, and as you said, the Cient'ian lifespan is extended. Our biological processes are slower than those of other species. Sheena's voice, though light, held a hint of melancholy as she spoke of her parents' tragic fate. Cient'ian, sensing her emotional state, remained silent, allowing the lift to carry them deeper into the heart of the ship. Cient'ian knew all of this, of course, but it was a good way to begin a friendship with the young girl. "So, have you seen the Lat'Ariel blade that will eventually be yours?" Cient'ian inquired. "Not yet," Sheena replied. "The Rykon, the species that forges these weapons, live in a remote sector, far from the war zones. Since the conflict began, they have refused to leave their enclave. I will have to travel to them in time, undergo the arduous process of design and construction. It is a long and intricate process." Cient'ian smiled. "Yes, the Rykon are a solitary people, averse to the conflicts of others. I have always wondered why they choose to forge these weapons for us." Sheena nodded thoughtfully. "They are scholars, philosophers. They believe the Cient'ian are an anomaly, a species not truly designed by the higher power. To create us, two other species were nearly driven to extinction, their genetic material forcibly combined. This melding has made us strong, but perhaps also fragile. They believe we lack a true soul, a soul aligned with the universe. Some even theorize that our existence has thrown the very fabric of reality out of balance. It's as if we are a foreign species introduced into an ecosystem, destined to either perish or to disrupt the delicate balance of the universe, but on a galactic scale." Cient'ian pondered this as they walked down the corridor towards the ammunition feed deck. "I remember stories from my childhood," she mused, "of how the humans, seeking refuge from their dying world, came to Sikwari. Over time, the two species interbred, their genetic material merging. Our species, the Cient'ian, is the result of that union." They reached a large, heavily sealed door guarded by two warriors. Cient'ian nodded to the guards, and they immediately swung the door open, revealing the impressive spectacle within. The ammunition feed chamber was a cavernous space, the walls lined with towering crates of ammunition. From each crate, a massive ammunition belt snaked upwards, disappearing into the ceiling, feeding the guns mounted on the upper decks. Hundreds of these belts crisscrossed the chamber, resembling a dense jungle canopy of steel and gunpowder. On two massive conveyor belts, hundreds of new ammunition crates awaited their turn, ready to be transported from the lower storage decks to replace the depleted ones. Automated mechanical arms, hanging menacingly from the ceiling, reached out to remove the empty crates, their metallic claws swiftly replacing them with fresh supplies. The entire process was a symphony of motion, each arm completing its task in a matter of seconds. Above, clinging to the walls like monstrous insects, were numerous workstations. Teams of 6 technicians, their eyes glued to a network of screens, monitored the firing rate of each gun, anticipating and addressing any potential jams or overheating. The chamber, a testament to the ship's firepower, hummed with a low, mechanical energy, a silent testament to the destructive power it held within. "This is impressive," Sheena exclaimed, her eyes wide with awe as she surveyed the vast chamber. "The sheer size of those rounds, it's almost impossible to comprehend. And to think that a single gun can fire thousands of rounds per minute, it's terrifying." Cient'ian smiled. "The guns of a fearful lady, the CSS Maidfen, the oldest ship in the entire Navy, and in my opinion, the finest." Sheena's eyes widened. "Yes, the feared CSS Maidfen. I studied her history at the Academy. She is a legend. One of the few ships that survived the initial attack by Emperor Goth'run'ouk's horde. Originally an exploration vessel, a mining ship, if I recall correctly. One of 5 that survived the initial onslaught. After the oppression was finally lifted, she and her sister ships were brought back from their hiding places in deep space and refitted as frontline battleships." Cient'ian nodded. "Indeed, the Maidfen was the first warship of this class in the Empire's navy. Much of the equipment you see here is as old as the ship itself. The Empire has been preoccupied with building new vessels, leaving little time for extensive refits. For the past 25 years, she has served primarily as a training vessel and for patrol duties. Her deployment to Rumel was an opportunity to utilize her for exploration once more, while simultaneously relieving pressure on the main fleet." Sheena chuckled. "An exploration vessel with an arsenal that could evaporate a small moon." Cient'ian grinned. "She has proven her worth in the few engagements she has participated in recently. She can still hold her own against the newest vessels. The Maidfin is a proud ship, and we, her crew, are equally proud to serve aboard her. I would not hesitate to take her into any battle. That is why she was assigned to you, Sheena replied, a knowing glint in her eyes. Cient'ian smiled. I am proud to have this ship. I hope to serve aboard her for many years to come. Just then, Tuck entered the chamber, bowing respectfully. My lady, he announced, my lord has sent me to escort you back to the surface. You are to attend a formal assembly with the ruling kingdom of this sector, along with the empress and the nobility, to celebrate our new alliance. Sheena nodded to Tuck. Very well. She turned back to Cient'ian, a warm smile gracing her lips. Please be careful on your return voyage. I look forward to continuing our friendship. She reached out and gently clasped Cient'ian's hand, holding it for a brief moment before turning to leave with the royal guard. Cient'ian watched Sheena depart, a lingering warmth settling over her. She turned back to continue her inspection, only to find Trill'eon standing a few paces away, his gaze fixed upon her. His eyes, a chilling shade of bluish-gray, studied her with an unsettling intensity, a mixture of boyish curiosity and unsettling scrutiny. He seemed to see through her, to know her intimately, despite their brief encounter. Admiral, he said, I have come to assist you with the inspection. Cient'ian frowned. Are you always in the habit of appearing so unexpectedly? She asked pointedly, her voice laced with a hint of irritation. Trill'eon stepped aside, his head bowed slightly. My apologies, Admiral. It is a habit, a necessary one. I will endeavor to make my presence known to you in the future. Cient'ian softened slightly at his humble apology. Very well, Trill'eon, let us proceed. She held out her hand. I trust you have begun your inspection report? Trill'eon handed her the small, intricately designed computer. Yes, Admiral. Cient'ian took the device, a flicker of curiosity in her eyes. I saw you on the loading deck earlier, she remarked casually as she walked past him. Trill'eon fell into step beside her. Yes, I was briefing my men on the upcoming mission. I see you have a new member of your group, Cient'ian observed. He looks quite young. Trill'eon nodded. Yes, his name is Talonvex, son of a noble house. He has been selected to replace another guard who perished in the line of duty. Trill'eon moved towards a rack overflowing with weapons. The room was a veritable arsenal, a vast expanse filled with racks upon racks of weaponry. Thousands of weapons, designed for every conceivable combat scenario, hung ready for deployment. Trill'eon stopped before a rack overflowing with gleaming breastplates. He selected one, examining it closely, his fingers tracing the intricate carvings. Cient'ian continued, her voice firm. You almost took his head off. I'm curious, if the young warrior had failed to stop your attack, would you have followed through? Trill'eon remained silent for a moment, his gaze fixed on the breastplate. Then, with a snap of his fingers, he secured the latches and returned it to its place. He moved to another rack, selecting a sleek, handheld crossbow. He detached the dart magazine, inspecting it with meticulous care. Finally, he turned to face Cient'ian. As a royal guard, he must be the very best, flawless in his performance. He cannot be allowed to serve the Empress, to protect her, if he is deficient in any way. Cient'ian frowned, her gaze fixed on the computer screen where she was marking the ammunition feed room as inspected. That wasn't my question, Trill'eon. Trill'eon, his attention now focused on a compact weapon that resembled a small, collapsible staff, pressed a button. The staff sprang open, extending into a long, slender bow. A laser beam, emanating from the tip, automatically drew the bowstring back, locking it into position. He thumbed another switch, and the beam retracted, the bow returning to its compact form. I am not in the habit of killing my brethren, Admiral, he said, his voice low and measured. My attack was a test, designed to gauge his reflexes, his instincts. He responded admirably, but would I have? No, I would not have. He pressed the button once more, the bow collapsing back into its compact form. I have a question for you, Cient'ian began, her eyes fixed on his. I understand that most of the Nopoldi-Wazul warriors are kept hidden, their existence shrouded in secrecy. It is rumored that only those of direct royal bloodline down to the 24th generation are eligible. Are you a Nopoldi-Wazul warrior? She asked, her voice a low thrum, her eyes flickering with a newfound interest. Trill'eon shook his head immediately. No, Admiral, I am not. I am the son of a noble family. My father, he was killed by Emperor Goath'run'ouk. I see, Cient'ian continued, her curiosity piqued. Have you ever encountered such a warrior, in battle perhaps? Trill'eon's eyes hardened, a flicker of a dark emotion crossing his features. Yes, once. It was a rare occurrence. They are rarely seen on the battlefield, and if one falls, it is usually a significant loss for the enemy. Did you defeat him? Cient'ian pressed. Trill'eon looked down at the floor, a grim expression settling over his face. No, only a tumultuous warrior can truly defeat another. They are superior, faster, stronger, trained to a level beyond anything I could ever hope to achieve. Their genetics, they are enhanced. Cient'ian raised an eyebrow. Yet you survived. Trill'eon looked at her, his eyes burning with a strange intensity. It was a fierce battle. On the plains of Otoko, on the planet Ozoral, he was a formidable opponent, a towering figure with a sword of lightning. He focused on me, ignoring all others. I fought him for what felt like an eternity. Then he withdrew. He declared that it was not my time to die. I will never forget him. His hair, it was silver like moonlight, and his eyes, pure white, they burned right through me. He was so fast, I could barely keep up with his attacks. I only managed to strike when he allowed me to. I believe he was testing me. Trill'eon unfastened his armor, revealing a long, angry scar that ran across his chest. He could have ended me with a single blow, but he didn't. Cient'ian looked at his muscled chest, her gaze lingering on the long, angry scar. You don't have to carry that scar, she offered. We have the technology to remove it completely. Trill'eon shook his head, a firm set to his jaw. I carry this scar as a reminder of the battle, of the opponent who tested me. It is a mark of honor, a testament to my dedication to the guild. Cient'ian understood. She had heard whispers of the silent code among the Malachite Guard, the unspoken pact to never erase the marks of their battles. It was a symbol of their dedication to the Empire, a silent testament to their unwavering loyalty. Indeed, there were none fiercer than the Malachite Guard, second only to the legendary tumultuous warriors. She nodded respectfully. I understand. Then her curiosity piqued. She asked, So what tumultuous warrior was he? Trill'eon looked at her, a flicker of something akin to awe in his eyes. As I lay on the ground, he knelt beside me. Young warrior, he said, his voice, it was like thunder. You now carry the mark of Lord Requiem. I will return, and when I do, we will finish this. A small smile touched Trill'eon's lips. I wait for that day. I train for that day. Cient'ian gasped, her eyes widening in disbelief. Lord Requiem, he is the most powerful of the tumultuous warriors. Only Emperor Goath'run'ouk and our Lord Minatella could possibly surpass him. He is the greatest warlord of the Goath'run'ouk Empire, a legend. Trill'eon's eyes narrowed, a fierce glint appearing in their depths. He gripped the hilt of his sword, his knuckles white. Aye, Admiral, and it will be an honor to face him again. This time, I will not be so easily spared. To be continued in Episode 2 of Book 1 of the Trill'eon Chronicles.